Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where a couple of guys come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Stoney.
Hello.
So, how's your
a week, right?
Yeah, I was just about to ask, how did your week go, man?
The week has been interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We've had some good and bad.
Yeah.
It was really nice to have Hottie Doctor or Miranda last week, and got a lot of good feedback on that.
Yeah.
That was fun, wasn't it?
It was a lot of fun, and it was also interesting to have a different yet similar perspective to the situation.
Well, she falls into the X generation age group, so
right.
You know,
exactly.
Which is good for me because I'm old and she's not. You know? I think I have 18 years on her or something.
Really?
No, not really.
I was like, okay.
She'll hear this and go, "Why not telling people that?" I was driving when you were born.
Right. Oh, no, stop it.
Yeah, it's true. I was 11. She was born.
Oh,
when I was
yeah.
11.
You driving tractors or something?
No, my Uncle Joe used to put me on his seat. You know,
really?
He lived out in a little rural area, and he'd take me out on the back roads, and he had one of those 70 Ford trucks with the gear shift on the steering column. And
can I, before we get the episode started, can I tell a little story as well?
Yeah, go.
The first car that I ever drove in was a friend, like my dad's friend, had a Buick Roadmaster.
Oh,
one of them. Those
are nice,
and it was wide. I mean, it took up every bit of the lane that I was driving in. And it was the first car I ever drove in.
Oh wow!
And it was so. And it was like this, like plush interior. He had all reclined back, and I'm like this little.
Those were nice cars.
They were, yeah.
Yeah.
That, and then I think I drove in like a Lincoln one time too. Again, very big.
Well, my grandparents had a nice big Lincoln, and it was old, and it had a CB radio.
No way.
Not one you put in; it actually came with the car.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. Go ahead, finish.
No, so I just remember being this little like 15, 16-year-old boy, just like holding the steering wheel, going like, "This thing is really big," because it was like I'm a kind of a thin guy, anyways, and so you can imagine this wide plush leather seat. It felt like I was sitting in my dad's recliner.
Right.
I was like, I'm in this. I was like, this car feels so huge, and I was like, so I was so nervous driving down. We went down a straight road, no stop signs, no. It was not a heavy traffic or anything.
Right.
One way, and when I was driving, and of course going like 35. My dad was a paramedic. He's like,
you thought you were going crazy. You thought
I thought it was
huh?
flying. My dad's like, "Stomp it, son." I'm like, I'm not doing that. And again, it was like in the afternoon, no one on this empty street. And so, and I remember just flooring it to like 55, and I was like, "Oh, I'm scared," and stopped. But it was what a great story.
How old were you?
Probably 15.
15.
Yeah, 15 or 16. Just about to get my permit. But anyways, I was gonna make a comment as well. Is a lot of times you can tell what kind of week we've had whenever we decide to pour some whiskey for ourselves.
I know, right?
We got some.
What are we drinking this week?
I'm drinking Johnny Walker Black Label.
And I
poured you some Double Black.
Double Black.
Interesting.
It's almost as good as the blue.
There you go.
It's almost as good. I like that.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to sample some Blue Label and some Black Label together, like
side by side,
and some other Johnny Walkers as well, and definitely. Black Label just by itself. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've tried Double Black, but for bang for your buck, Black Label,
right?
Very similar to blue, but not quite as.
I hate to say it, I love that blue.
The blue's great.
I love the blue. It's so expensive.
Exactly.
But,
yeah.
You know,
sometimes if you can't afford $300 worth of whiskey, you can skip on it and get $50, and you're like, it's similar.
It's so worth it though. Oh my God, it's good stuff.
Anyways, so what do we have as a topic for this week? I normally, as of the past recent episodes, we have talked about it beforehand and have an idea.
We try to prepare. We try to prepare, you know. And
well, we're going back to our roots this week because he had a little bit of Stoney had a bit of a surprise for me. So I don't know what's going on. Don't know what this is.
No clue, right?
No clue.
But you can tell in my face I've had a rough week.
Yeah.
And I thought, for a change, you know, one of the things that the responses that we get back every week is that people like the authenticity and how genuine we are.
Right.
And so this week, I'm pretty much just going to kind of bare my soul on a subject.
Okay.
And it is being a stepdad.
Really?
Yes. I have, in the last 2 weeks, I have had such a really high and such a really low being a stepdad. And I'm beginning to think I'm a failure. I'm really beginning to think that I'm failing miserably at it. With everything in my life, I've been shot, stabbed, run over by a car, knocked off a building on my back, had one finger cut off at the knuckle, held my right ankle near my chest. It bent completely backwards.
Oh my gosh.
Everything I thought that I had survived would prepare me for this hasn't.
Wow.
I am so sorely unequipped to do what I'm doing.
Wow.
It is probably the scariest thing I've ever done in my life.
Really?
Yeah.
Man.
You've met Magnus.
I have, yeah.
You know he's very advanced for his age.
Yes.
And
he's so innovative.
He's very innovative.
Like I don't want to say the wrong way.
No, it's the wrong way. It is. Here's the problem. This is why I'm here bearing my soul.
Right.
Because it is absolutely in the wrong way.
Right.
And it amazes me in the wrong way, in a bad way, some of the stuff he does. And as soon as you think you're turning the corner, we get him every other Sunday.
Okay.
We bring him to his dad's at 6:00, and then the next Sunday at 6:00, his dad brings him to us. So that way he gets a full week at school.
Right.
And with the Easter break and everything, he wanted to spend some time with his sister. So the half of the week that we were going to have him, he wanted to stay with his sister, and that was cool. You know, he spent some time. She had the week off because of school and everything. So we get him on Wednesday night, and we had the most amazing 4 or 5 days with him.
Wow.
He was an absolute angel. He was funny. He was engaging. He was just awesome. Wow. You know, we did stuff. It allowed us to do stuff for him and with him. And, you know, he's kind of been grounded for a while. And it allowed us to, you know what? Wow, this is awesome. Why don't you have some TV time?
Right.
You know, basically unfettered, unrestricted TV time other than, PG,
of course,
and less.
Right.
But go, man, watch one of your shows. Have a good time. And he goes back to his dad's, and he has some bad days at school. And he's getting more marks than he ever has. And then he comes back with us, and it's the same thing. More marks, you know, and I'm afraid he's going to fail out of the class.
Yikes.
And I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
I really don't know how to reach him. My dad's answer was the belt. Mm-hmm. And my dad didn't hit you once or twice.
Right.
He hit you 15 to 18 times with a belt.
Yeah.
And literally beat you.
Yeah.
And that's not my response to Magnus.
Of course.
Obviously, I'm a step parent.
Right.
So, even though mom gives me permission, if you need to, but I don't want to do that.
Right.
That's the father's responsibility, and that's the mother's responsibility to do that. So I'm just trying to reach him in a fashion that inspires him and shows him, why don't we do this instead of that?
Right.
And
how old is he again?
He just turned 12.
Just turned 12.
Yeah.
Man. Have you two had like alone time where you've had a chance to go talk with him?
Yes.
Okay. Because I was going to say that's
we even had some of that tonight, since you asked. We had some of that tonight before I came here. He's had some of the worst days he's ever had.
Right.
I spoke to some people today. I spoke to a couple of my attorney friends, and I spoke to some other people about it. And one of my attorney friends said, he kind of called me back afterwards, and he said, Sonny, I want to ask you a question. Mm-hmm. He said, this behavior that you're describing, he says, is something that I went through when I was that age.
Right.
And he says, I was being bullied, terribly bullied.
Oh, wow.
And so I would go home and take it out on my parents because I knew they really couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
So I tried to be their bully to make up for while I'm at school. I was being bullied and felt like I couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
And so
trying to control something you can't.
Trying to control something, yes. And so I pulled Magnus aside and I sat down with him, And he didn't want to talk when I first got in.
Right.
His mom and I were trying to talk to him, and he just, you know, how kids close up and they cross their arms and their eyes glass over, and, you know, you can just see the hatred in their eyes because I can't believe you're trying to make me talk to you right now. And so he got sent to bed, and I was talking to, you know, Miranda for a while, and finally I said, I need to go talk to Magnus. I had a question to ask him.
Right.
And so I went and I turned on his light. I just very quiet, very peaceful. I just tried to just calm the situation down.
Right.
And I says, hey, buddy, you know, can we actually have a real conversation? Would you agree to have a conversation with me? And he kind of shook his head. And I said, no, I want you to agree to a conversation.
Right.
To where you and I actually speak to each other and talk and try to figure some things out about each other.
Right.
And he said, yeah, Mr. Stoney, I'll do that. And I said, you know, by agreeing to that, that means you have to talk and participate in the conversation.
Right, right.
And, you know, I told him about my conversation with my friend.
Yeah.
And I said, are you being bullied?
Yeah.
And normally Magnus has a response for everything very quickly.
Snappy, yeah.
And he started doing and I'm not going to say it on the air because I don't want, he listens to this and I don't want him to know what I'm talking about when I'm looking at his tells when he's lying.
Right.
But you could tell those things started to happen in his face and his body language and things like that. He was getting ready to fib pretty big.
Right.
And then all of a sudden he just shook his head no and closed his eyes really tight.
Right.
And it just dawned on me, like, either he's being bullied or he's the bully himself.
Right.
And I have to figure that out, and I don't know how to do that. And, you know, it's like the teachers, you know, they don't seem to be able to help. They're so tied up in what they're doing, they don't care, you know. And I think they care about the kids.
Right.
I really do. I earnestly believe that all of his teachers care about him.
Right.
But they're fed up. They're at the end of the school year.
Yeah.
There's nothing, you know, they're ready for this year just to end.
Yeah, to be done with.
Magnus is ready for this year just to end. You know, Miranda and I are ready for this year just to end.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure this thing out. And it's hard. It's so hard to know. You know, there's no book. You know what? There's 150 million books on parenting and step parenting out there.
Right.
And none of them get it right.
No, of course. I mean, they try their best with but it's another one of those situations where it is so it's all about context a lot of times, because there are things that can work for certain scenarios, but then that doesn't mean that it's going to work.
Well,
in
what
this
works
scenario.
for your kid may not work for my kid.
Exactly. That's what I mean. It's like it all is about context.
And
like
then a parent doing it may not be the same thing as a step parent trying to do it.
How much trust is in the scenario? How much, you know, like, you know, how long have you been in the picture? Like that kind of stuff where it's like it could be something different. But yeah, I that was the first thing I was thinking is having a space where he can speak up about that kind of stuff, talk about it, be comfortable, you know, and know that this is a safe space that I can speak about this and it's not going to be.
And I tried to establish that tonight.
Right.
I really earnestly did.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, then some other things, you know, and trying to figure this out. Some friends mentioned that, you know, he might feel guilty because he actually really likes me. And what if that makes him feel guilty about liking somebody else as well as his dad? You know, he loves and likes his dad. Right. But what if he loves and likes me too, and that's causing him some confusion?
Right. Yeah, I never thought about that.
And then on the same thing, if his dad is dating somebody else, does he feel guilty about liking her? Right. And that, you know, and this has got to be really confusing for him because it should be a mother and a father. Right. And, you know, 7 days a week, you know, 52 weeks in the year, you know, for 18 years in a day. Yeah.
So for me, like it's so interesting to hear about some of this.
Because if I may, you came, I want to say, from a broken home. Your mom and dad parted.
Yeah. Well,
and how old were you when that happened?
Well, so that's the point that I'm making right now. It's interesting to hear about this because I grew up in a time, and I grew up in an area where a lot of my friends had split homes. Right. In their like teenage formative years. Some a little bit further along in high school, some a little more like middle school-ish. for me, I don't want to say fortunate, but kind of fortunate enough to be 23.
Okay.
So I was like, even though I may not have known fully who I was, by the time I was 22, 23, I was mostly on my own.
Right.
And I was a functioning adult in some capacity. I had struggles inwardly with myself. Whenever my parents split, it was a lot of like, what does marriage look like? What does love look like? And then for me, because I was in a religious household, it was like, what does religion look like? Because, because again,
no, that's good.
Yeah, because it was something that factored into marriage. It's like marriage is a bond, and again, for me, it was a sacred bond, bound by God in some capacity, and all that. So again, for me, it was like this kind of rabbit hole of like I started questioning a lot of stuff and questioning like, what is my relationship with God?
Well, if I may interject there, I'm kind of glad you said that. Because you've met Magnus.
Right.
We attend church together.
Right.
And you've met him in church. And so as smart as he is and advanced as he is, and the questions that he has, he takes communion now. He participates in the church. He loves helping the elderly to their, he has some servitude in him.
Right.
What if that's one of the confusions for him?
Maybe.
What if he's confused between the religious part of it and then seeing his mom and dad not together anymore?
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
I need to reevaluate that.
Well, yeah. And so that was, for me, again, like I said, because I was also, for me, I was more of a socially awkward kid. And then, of course, as I kind of turned to 18, 19, 20, and had my first couple of like solid jobs after high school was when I really started to break out of my shell. And like, I can hold a conversation with a person. I can be charismatic in some capacity.
Right.
And so by the time my parents had officially divorced or even split up at the time, I may have been getting comfortable in myself, but I may not have been confident in myself. And so that was where I think a lot of that questioning came into play because, again, religion not really religion, but church as a whole and the community aspect of it. Faith. Yeah, correct. Was such an integral part of all that whenever it started off as like, what does love even look like if after 20-something years or so, it is all for nothing or whatever, or it was what it felt like in the moment. I know it wasn't the case.
Well, my parents split up after 36 years.
Wow.
Right. I was already gone. I was really well established. I had left home early because I did not agree with what some of my dad's beliefs were.
Right.
And it was just time for me to go.
Right.
I'm not going to bring his business out. That's his and his world. And in case he's listening and doesn't know who I am, I'm not going to bring that out.
Right.
That's his privacy and his demons he has to deal with. And one day he'll be accountable for that. And I still have a relationship with my mother. But they split after, I think, 36 years. And I was well gone.
Oh, yeah.
I was...
Well, yeah, and
Lord,
I think...
obviously, I was in my mid-30s,
But for my scenario, it was... I never really had a super long-term relationship. And if I did, I think the one that I did have was probably 6 months, almost a year. And she was no longer interested in me is kind of what happened. So it was like after we got to know each other really well, I think she found somebody else and kind of had like before.
Wow.
So it was like, so for me, I was hurt because I was really invested, but I could tell that I think as we got to know each other, she was no longer. Again, that's okay. I understand things happened. But in the moment, having like a first relationship at like almost 20-some years old or 20 years old, it affected me as opposed to kids that go through that in like high school and have a couple years to kind of deal with it. I was now in this whole new season. So I feel like a late bloomer in that regard.
Okay.
And then a few years after that, my parents getting split was when like you can see, or at least for me, looking back retrospectively.
Yeah, right. Nope.
Yeah, right. Looking back in retrospect is I can see the.
I love when that happens.
Right. I could see the snowball into like how I started to question what does marriage look like, and then of course even deeper, what does. But
you were at least old enough at that point to be able to form some conclusions on yourself.
Right.
Magnus isn't.
And that, I think the long-winded way of saying it, that is the point that I'm getting to as well, is like, what is, I don't know what being in a split household looks like at 11,
Right.
12 years old.
Right.
And I can only imagine it being really rough and hard to connect all the dots and make it all, because like right now my parents are not remarried, but I can see how even as a 20-something-year-old, like, if I had more relatives and then of course more combined families in some capacity, it being even harder to gauge all of that.
Right.
And like I said, I don't know what that looks like as a pre-teenage kid at this point in time.
Right.
But
And it's just, and I kind of asked him that. I said, are you trying to get rid of me in hopes of maybe your mother and dad getting back together again?
right.
And his eyes got really, really
I
big.
was like, uh-oh.
And I'm like, oh shit, did I hit something right there?
Yeah. Struck a nerve.
And he said, no, Mr. Stoney, and that's one of the things see that right there, that kind of bugs me. Being from Canada, Miranda's family, they don't say Mr. and ma'am and things like that. They call their grandparents by their first name.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you call everybody by their first name, and you don't say those, ma'am and, Mr. and Mrs. and things like that.
Right.
Still to this day, as hot and heavy as we get with discipline and structure, and he still calls me Mr. Stoney. I've never asked him to call me Mr. Stoney, and he still does it to this day. Year and a half into it, maybe a little bit more than a year and a half.
Right.
Still to this day.
Well, I mean, I guess if for me, it at least shows that there's some level of respect.
Right.
I mean, even if he may not like you, I think he may respect you in some way, which I think is
right
better than certain scenarios where I think that the stepdad may not get even that kind of treatment.
Sometimes I don't think so.
Right.
So that's what sometimes I think I'm making a little headway.
Right.
And then boom, 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 boom.
One step forward, 3 steps back.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, with Magnus, it's about a half a step forward and about 10 steps back. But
right.
But there are good days, and those good days are so awesome.
Right.
The church had this little function a while back where they were helping some elderly ladies, widows, and single moms. And he spent the whole day there.
Oh, wow.
And I told him, Magnus, if you come volunteer, I'll give you $25.
There you go.
And he came out there and had such a good time and helped. Even, the men, these are old working class men, were so impressed with him. He was engaging. He was funny. He was doing all the little things, taking the trash, volunteering to do this, doing everything. Never asked me for that $25.
Really?
Never asked me. He had so much fun and was so enjoyed being around these men's men.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave that scenario
right
there. He was enjoying being around men that worked.
Yeah.
Never asked me for that money.
Wow.
Never asked me for that money. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I put it aside, for him for one day. He'll need something, but I put it aside, just tucked it away in my little safe there. Got a little magnet written on it.
Right.
Because I keep my word.
Of course.
But it was important to him not to ask me for it because he was serving people. He saw those women came up and hugged him and loved on him and thanked him. And, the men were like, oh, go ahead, look at you, man. Oh, wow, that's awesome. And he was asking questions. He was doing things.
Right.
And that was an awesome, like I said, there's good days, and then there's really, really bad days.
Right.
And I'm frustrated with that because I didn't realize how much of a roller coaster this was going to be.
Yeah.
And
I think, again, I understand this conversation is probably just a chance for you to talk this out and vent about it because I have no experience with this, but I can only imagine that.
But you do because, we're both men from somewhat broken homes.
Right.
Maybe different times.
Yeah, exactly.
But it still makes us all feel the same way.
Yeah, you're right.
To realize our mom and dads aren't together anymore.
Yeah. I was thinking about this in like a time in his life kind of thing. Is like he's going through a lot of hormonal changes probably. He's going through a lot of like life changes.
Yeah, we're definitely going through the hormone thing now.
But that's what I'm saying is like a lot of stuff. I'm not I'm not saying that that it is I'm by no means am I saying this is a phase,
Sure.
but it's like, but what does it look like to kind of keep the same rhythm you have going with him in like his 16, 17 years old, wherever,
But
that kind of
here's
stuff.
the problem. The phase has been going on since he was 3.
Oh, really?
Miranda told me a story that when he was 3 years old, that Magnus is allergic to milk.
Okay.
So the lunch lady asked him if you want water or juice. And he said, juice. She apparently heard water. So she puts a cup of water down there. And he looks at it. He looks up at her. And he looks at the water. And he pushes it back to her and says, does that look like juice, dumbass? 3 years old.
Oh, my God.
So this has kind of been a long-term phase.
Yeah.
I think it started like 3 days after he popped out the womb. And it's been going steady since then. I mean, who thinks like that at 3 years old?
I definitely didn't. I remember being 2 years old, and I was in the bathtub. My mom was washing me up, and my mom said, "It's time to get out of the bathtub." And I looked at her and said, "No."
That was it.
How
long till you woke up?
Just wait. And then my mom said, "Excuse me? It's time to get out the bath right now." And I said, "No." And then she's like, "I'm going to count to 3, and if you're not out this tub, I'm going to whoop your tail."
Mm-hmm.
And she says 1, and then I said 2, 3, no.
Oh my God!
When I tell you, my mom whooped my ass all the way from the bathtub into my bed, and my mom felt so guilty afterwards. She was
Why?
like, "Well, because
you deserved it."
That's the thing. So again, in the moment was what the thing. So I went to bed like, going to bed like crying or whatever, and she was like, "I feel like such a bad person," but I'm telling you, ever since then,
you never did it again, did you?
And never did it again.
Never did it again.
Never did it again. But that, again, like I said, I think that's also the type of person that I am.
Sure.
And it was that terrible too, obviously. But that's about as crazy as I got as a kid.
Never did it again.
No. And so,
yes,
and again,
ma'am. I'll be right out, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
My middle brother was definitely the one to like push the envelope a lot of times. And I remember, obviously, I would like to get my brother in trouble as an older brother, and that's what you do. But he would also like to get himself in trouble, and I was always like, and so my mom would just
okay if I get you in trouble, right. Don't do it yourself.
My mom would give me a look, and I would start to like, tear up a little bit, like, no, I'm sorry, I didn't, and I'm sorry. So
that is maybe one thing we do have in common is we're both the oldest.
Right.
See, I'm the oldest of 3.
Same.
My sister was 18 months younger than me, and my brother was 4 years younger than me.
Right. I have 2 younger brothers, and we're each 2 years apart. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So I can remember we did normal kid stuff. Now, my dad thought we were the most evil kids on the planet.
Of course.
But we never really did anything bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I snuck out one time as a kid.
Right.
One time. And I think I even mentioned this on an episode before, and I'll go ahead and mention it again, but they showed Salem's Lot on TV.
Oh, yes, you did.
Did I really?
Yeah,
and it was the one time, and I didn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I just snuck out at midnight. There was a full moon, which kind of really didn't help the situation out. I was Magnus's age.
There you go.
Maybe 13.
Right.
Maybe about to turn 14. And I just kind of shook my fist up in the air and said, if there's any vampires out there, come get me now. And I've literally, until Magnus, never been scared of anything in my life.
Man.
And now I'm just scared of being a failure with him.
Right.
One of my lieutenants, who's now a captain, one of my favorite people on the planet,
right.
His name is Laney, Captain Laney, and I'll just leave that there. But I know he listens, and I'm just paying him some respect.
Name drop.
Yes, I name dropped him.
Right.
And he came and sat down in my office when I met Hottie Doctor, or Miranda. I guess we can say Miranda now, and Magnus, and he said, "I'm really proud of you. I'm really, really proud of you, and I want you to know you're gonna affect this kid's life for the rest of his life. What you do now, you're gonna affect him for the rest of your life."
Right.
And I just want to do that right.
Yeah.
I don't want to affect his life in a negative way. I want to affect his life in a positive way.
Right.
And he's one of the captain is one of the greatest leaders I've ever met in my life.
Right.
And I don't want to do right by his advice too.
Yeah.
I don't want to let him down. I don't want to let Magnus down. I don't want to let anybody down in this.
Right.
And sometimes you just feel like you get this thing in your throat, and you just feel like such a failure.
Mm-hmm. I understand that. Not in like in a parental aspect, but in like a career aspect.
Right.
There is so many times where I feel like I either overwork myself, or a lot of times I used to work like freelance jobs too, to where I feel like I never could say no, because you never quite know where the money's coming from sometimes.
Right.
So just keep on working until you feel like you can't anymore. And then a lot of times you feel like for me, I have a certain level of like perfection that I hold myself to. And so if my work starts to like get below that, that's when I'm like, this is the standard.
Right.
And if I'm not meeting that standard, it's like, it's not good enough. I'd recently took an Enneagram test and realized I'm a type 1 personality, which is very much conducive to that sort of thing, where it's like being a perfectionist in a lot of ways, and also being hard on yourself, having like a mental voice that kind of will be an inner critic about a lot of stuff like that. And so I definitely feel your pain, and like looking at a scenario and going like, I'm failing this.
After everything I've been through in life,
right?
This is the one thing I'm going to fail at.
Yeah,
this is it. This is,
I don't think you're going to be a failure. I just think this is one of those things where it's probably going to take more time. It is going to take you being present and you having a consistency with things and being a cornerstone in his life. Personally, like, this is what I think in this scenario. Could be very, very wrong. I think it is. You said you've been there for
year and a half. Some change.
Is just keeping it up.
Right.
Is like it's not going to probably get any easier. It's probably not going to get. I think it can always get harder, but
right.
But it's like it's that consistency, that the bonding of this, like, you're here, you are someone that he can confide in, he can trust in, you're a role model in some way, and it's keeping that up. And so that way every opportunity that he has to look for that, or look for some sort of stability, or however it may be, and so that way, again, whenever he may go through like a hard time or may change or whatever, he can look to you and say, like, help.
Right.
For me personally, like, I always appreciated my mom and my dad, but during my teenage years, I was an asshole about a lot of things to my parents. I have a very similar personality type to my dad, and so I was kind of shitty to my dad sometimes, just like because of our personalities, and they're so alike, and they kind of conflict in a lot of ways. Growing up and being an adult, kind of going through those changes I talked about earlier, made me appreciate that I had a dad that was there. Made me appreciate a mom that at sometimes probably overloved me and like was probably a bit too much for certain people. But, obviously growing up and seeing that a lot of my peers or friends or whomever didn't quite have that, looking back on it, I can say I was fortunate in a lot of ways. Maybe not in everything.
Sure.
But if there's one thing I can say, is I had like good parents that loved me.
Right.
And I don't need to take that for granted.
I don't know both your parents. they do.
Yeah. And so like, but it took me kind of like getting out of my own a little bit and having that moment where I was like, I needed some time away. I needed to grow up a little bit, get into the trenches of the workforce and do things myself.
To kind of understand what they were trying to teach you.
Yeah.
Because when you're...
apply all the stuff they teach me.
When you're Magnus's age and, for the next couple of teen years and stuff, you think you absolutely know everything.
Right.
There's nothing anybody can teach you. You know it all.
Right. Or in my case, it was like just repetition.
Sure.
So my mom and dad, or specifically my mom, really hammered into me being a gentleman, is like treating women right, is holding doors open. It's like being that person. It's like being a good father and husband in a lot of ways was like that my mom taught me. And again, it got to the point where it was so repetitive that like I never had the opportunity to practice what she was teaching me.
Right.
Because it was like every opportunity that I had to show that, it was always like she would try and reinforce it. And so it got to the point where it was frustrating almost, that I was like, you won't let me run free on the leash that you have before like you just yank on it again to tell me it all over again.
Right.
And it's like, and it wasn't ever in like in a bad way, but leaving that and really getting off the leash and doing it myself and practicing it and being a gentleman in public, being a person that people can confide in, like that kind of thing is like having the freedom to leave the nest was when I started to realize I was like, I took it for granted in the moment because it was either repetitive or it was what I knew, and it was, it was just your parents. You're just like, oh, I love my parents, but just I need to get out or whatever. But it took me leaving, specifically going through some stuff, going through the divorce and running away to Canada before and really getting away from my family and friends before I realized that I was like, I had a good family that treated me well, and that even though we were probably middle class, I was never lacking.
Is that part of, I don't know what word I want to use, but when you're in a family unit and you're young, you're protected. You're protected from all sides. You have, as my dad used to call it, the four corners of the house or the castle. This is my four corners. You're here temporarily, but you're still here, and you're protected by the king and the queen. You're protected by, all of this stuff. And so you really don't get a real view of what the world is out there. And so it's easy for you to, if you want to think you're succeeding, to succeed under that kind of a controlled atmosphere until you get out on your own. And then you realize that was kind of a facade, and then that protection was there and given to you. Not because they necessarily liked you, but because that was their job, and they did it. And they tried to protect you. I told Magnus the other day, I said, my job is nothing but to teach you how to parent yourself when you move out. Because that's what it's going to take. You're going to have to do the things that we're doing now so that you can provide that for your family. That same nest, that same castle, those same four walls, that you need to know everything you can do to take care of your family. Is that?
Yeah, I think more.
So you left that castle. You went. You went to a whole other country pretty early.
I think for me it was more like the thing that I remember being raised in like a Christian household, and I think I remember gleaning the most of it, like being in church and being a family together. Was like, I never really had a whole lot of extended family. So the emphasis on like grandparents and our immediate family. My two younger brothers, my dad and mom were like the family unit. And so I never had a huge extended family, never had a bunch of like cousins or family. I did, but was never really around them because of our location and because of, them moving away or whatever it may be. And so I remember like the immediate family for me is what always feels like the most important, because like you can have extended family, you can go out into the world, but like whenever you get home is when like that's why I think I care so much about my home, especially hosting for the people. Is like this is
your four corners. This is hopefully your parents taught you enough to make everybody feel safe that comes here. And you are one of the most hospitable people on the planet. Absolutely. Absolutely. Every time you come here, it's homey. It's nice. And, you're a very gracious host.
Thank you.
That's a dying art in itself.
But but
you took what your parents gave you. And it took you a while to get there, but you still went through the motions to get there. So do we look back in that time of taking it for granted when we're younger? Then we have to, like Magnus right now takes a lot for granted. He has a lot of stuff. He don't need it. I walked through his, next to his bedroom, and it stunk. Just stunk. And you look in there, and there's 15 pairs of clothes in the bathroom. He walks in, throws them on. We're not doing that no more. Okay? We're not if he has that many clothes,
Yeah.
Let's take them all and give him 5 of this, 4 of this, 3 of this,
Right.
to where he's got to keep them washed or he's got nothing to wear.
Yeah.
To where he learns to appreciate
Right.
what he has.
Right.
Because it's not until you go without.
Right.
Because
And so,
you probably ate a little ramen soup on
Oh,
your little
of
trek.
course.
You
Yes.
know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Instead of these
100%.
fancy lamb and potato meals, with the
Yes.
rosemary and everything your mama's doing for you.
Right.
Now you go eat that ramen soup,
Yeah.
7 days in a row.
There was nothing like saving up some money while I was in Canada and trying my hardest to like make my own Alfredo sauce, and it failed.
Right. Hey, look, I learned how to doctor up some ramen soup.
Yeah,
Okay?
Same. Trust me.
I learned how to doctor that shit up good.
But the thing is like trying to lie to yourself and eat it and go like, this is not bad. Even though I finished it, I was like, that was awful.
Right.
And I was like, I just felt so defeating. But I got better though.
I want to take a quick break. I just noticed something.
What's that?
Our timing is getting way better. Do you know how I noticed that?
How's that?
Because we are noticing each other. When the other one wants to take a sip of the beverage, we know to talk just a little bit longer,
Right.
so you can appreciate it,
yes.
sniff it,
Of
and
course.
savor that moment.
Right.
It's like our timing is on. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? It's like
yeah.
that, I need to talk for another 30 seconds.
We've done this for
almost a year.
almost a year. I can't believe that.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
That is crazy.
I think we started in, July or August of last year, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So what are we into 9 months now?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But to kind of go back to what we were talking about before.
I'm sorry. I noticed that and I was like, I need to comment about that.
Was also again having a Christianity outlook, was like having the family unit being important, even if it wasn't explicitly said, like having a clean home as much as we could, and like having the core family unit, and of course then going out. And I was never explicitly taught. This is probably where it's going to be controversial in a lot of ways, but like I remember pretty vividly, like race was never really a big thing. My parents weren't like racist by any means, and so or it was never taught to me.
Right.
So like I just remember viewing people as just people. So it was like it was never, I know that's probably, like I said, some people might be offended by that, but it was never really explicitly like I was raised that like these are all people, variety of skin colors and backgrounds and religious beliefs. And I was taught that everyone can have their opinion. Everyone can believe something that they want to believe. It may not be what you believe. It may not be right in your opinion, but that doesn't give you the right to tell them that they're wrong, because they are a person that has their own belief system or their own life that they have lived. And if they ask you for your opinion, or they ask you for what you believe in, to tell them what you believe in.
Right.
And so I lived that throughout my entire life, is again, regardless of what religion you are, regardless of what race you are, you're still a person.
Sure.
And I still think you deserve respect.
And you see, I got the opposite.
Well,
Not to bring out his business.
Right.
But he was trying to teach me the opposite. He hated a lot of people.
Right.
A lot of people. For a whole bunch of reasons. And he was trying to impart that on me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't buying it.
Right.
He was a racist. He was these things that, and I couldn't take it. That wasn't who when I was early, I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I knew I didn't want to be that.
Right.
And
Exactly.
if that makes it, I knew enough that I didn't want to do that.
Right.
And so I was getting out as quick as I could.
Yeah.
My mom really didn't partake in those beliefs, but I didn't sound it right. And, but that's why she got out.
Yeah.
She couldn't take it anymore.
Of course.
And so we take a lot of these things for granted. And it's just, I just want to be that good influence on Magnus. I want to be that rock. I want to be, like you said, that safe place that, no matter what, he knows, I might get a little upset, but I always got your back.
Yeah.
I always have your back.
And this is I think a point that I didn't quite make, is talking about that as being that rock, being that safe space for him, is that there will probably come a time where he will need that.
Right.
And he may go to his mom, he may go to his dad, but it's knowing that, like, if shit hits the fan, that I know that I can come to somebody that's not going to judge me for what's going on. And it's going to help me go through something.
Right.
And
I want to be that person.
And that's what I'm saying, is that he may not understand that now. He may take it for granted or whatever may be the situation. But come the time whenever he finds his first girlfriend, or he has his first heartbreak, or he's being bullied, or he's going through a hard time, something or whatever. And whenever all else fails, you're there and you're always encouraging him and always being there for him. I think it's going to speak volumes in his life as a young man. I think personally, because that's one thing that I think I realized is like having people in my life that showed me love and compassion, but that also encouraged me and was always there for me, were people that, like, in those teenage years that I still remember. There was a youth pastor that was like, he was a bit eccentric in his delivery of things. People in the church, the uppity people, probably didn't quite like him, but he had a way of talking to us as teenagers in that time. He had a way of delivering things, and in a way of also just being there in my life. That even though I had my parents that I could confide in, he was this external source that I could go to him and talk to him, and I could have this kind of relationship with this person that was outside but was still there. And like it was people like him that, like, I confided in with certain things, and with my family as well. So, but anyways,
so I just, I hope I didn't offend anybody.
Yeah,
I bared my soul. If anybody has any comments or thoughts, I'll be, when this drops, I'll be putting it on the Facebook page. Please feel free to comment. Share your story. Tell us a little bit about it. Maybe we'll do a follow-up on this in a period of time. And
especially because we're in a time where there is a lot of split homes.
Sure.
There's a lot of people that are either on the risk. Because, again, like I said, even in high school, there was a lot of kids that I knew that were going through that. And I wasn't experiencing it at that time. So there's people that are through all age ranges that I think are in receiving ends of that.
Right. There's a lot of people hurting out there.
Yeah.
And our kids are so advanced.
Oh,
and
it's so connected.
And that's what I was going to say. In my head, I'm wondering, we know Magnus is addicted to electronics.
Right.
If that doesn't play a part in it too, because they are so into this instant gratification world. They don't understand what it is to, like, read a book.
Right.
Watch the damn movie.
Yeah.
You'll get the same thing out of it. No, you won't.
Yeah.
Read the book.
Yeah.
Then watch the movie. Never watch the movie and then read the book. That never works out. And get something. Take some time. Slow down. Take some time. Spend time with your family. Spend time with your friends. Take that extra, take an extra 10 seconds on the hug.
Yeah.
It literally, and I learned this with the stroke, it might be the last time.
Right.
I'm almost 60 years old now. That could have been the last time I saw Miranda or Magnus or my mom or my brother or my sister or you.
Yeah.
Or all these other people. That could have been it.
Right.
And then in my life, I've taken the job that I have now. And, I kind of tell people all the time, in a joking way, but maybe not really, I do it to, where I'm at. It's of servitude. I hope I'm serving right the people that I work for, but I want to atone for some past sins and maybe make a difference in somebody's life. I'm a Christian, so Jesus is really the only one that atoned for my sins, but I can try. I can believe in him, but I really just want to make a difference in somebody's life, and I really want to make a difference in Magnus's life.
Right.
If I pass, I want him to stand up and say, that dude made a difference in my life.
Right.
And I wonder if that's too much to ask.
No. I really do think it's just a time thing. I think there's probably other things you probably could do. There's other things behind the scenes that I don't know about.
Sure.
Like, again, I didn't quite ask the question, like, how is his home life with his biological dad?
Well, I want to try to leave that out because that's a privacy thing.
And exactly. And that's why I didn't want to ask. But it was like, it's
implied there's some issues.
And so that's the thing is like, that's the things that I don't know about. It's like, and again, also from a personal standpoint, like from his personal standpoint is like, does he want to be there? Like you said, I think earlier, does he want to try and get rid of you? Is he trying to like spend more time here? Right. Is he just trying to, or whatever? It's like there's all those
questions.
Yeah, and more.
I go through them all every second of every day, trying to figure it out.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is like I think you more than anybody else listening or I know some of those things that we don't, and is just taking a lot of that into consideration, and then just being present,
right,
and just being there.
And that's what I'm doing, and I let him know that tonight before I came up here. We had that heart to heart. I said, "Look, you may be trying to test me."
Right.
Other people have left you. Other people have said mean things to you and your family. You might just simply be trying to test me to see how far you got to push me before I leave.
Right.
Well, I'm full of piss and vinegar. That's not happening. You're not going to win that battle.
Right.
I'm not going anywhere. I may relate to you a little bit differently.
Right.
Because if you don't want my love, if you don't want my understanding, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You make that choice, and I'll respect that. But I'll never leave. If you want me, if you want help succeeding, I'll be right there. I'll never leave.
Right.
You can't push me that hard.
Mm-hmm. All right. Man, it's so, I've never really considered some of these things.
Right.
Because it's, I've never been in that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very, very interesting and very great conversation. I really enjoyed this.
I hope I didn't surprise you too much with
No.
And I hope our listeners aren't, ticked off because I kind of just bared my soul here tonight.
I doubt it.
I hope they listen. I hope I can connect with some people. And please, reach out on Facebook and our other medias if you want to connect on this subject. Throw me some ideas, throw me some support, or tell me I'm an idiot. I really don't care at this point. You want to tell them how they can find us?
Yes. So if you're looking for us, you can type in Linktree/Retrospect Pod, and you can find all of our links there. Or you can just type in Retrospect Pod on Facebook and reach out to us that way. And we should be on all the major podcasting platforms. And if you can, go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. It really means a lot. But anyways, until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Peace.